Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim Defede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim Defede. Days after the capture of Nicolas Maduro, President Trump told the New York Times he envisions the United States controlling Venezuela and its vast oil reserves for years to come. It's also clear that at least for now, while the dictator is gone, the dictatorship remains. Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's hand-picked vice president, is the country's interim president, while Interior Minister Cabello and Defense Minister Pedrino Lopez, both under indictment in the United States, remain in their positions. This week, I had the opportunity to speak to Juan Guaido, the opposition leader who was named interim president of Venezuela in 2019. His presidency was recognized by the United States and more than 50 other countries, but he never was able to truly take power. He led a coup to unseat Maduro in 2019, but after it failed, he fled to the United States. During President Trump's 2020 State of the Union address, he recognized Guaido in the gallery.
Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your family.
He has been living in Miami for the past few years, and when I spoke to him, I started by asking for his reaction to Maduro's capture.
Well, for me, from the perspective of a Venezuelan, the first word that came at my mind was justice, I have to say, for that people who was kidnapped by the regime, for those who try to remove his vote that regime once and again. For the first word that came was justice, but also hope, opportunity to get back to my country. I'm in exile in this moment for the persecution of the regime. And with me, 8 million Venezuelans, 25% of our population are in exile because that regime. So for us, what's a touching moment and a hopeful one for our country.
Now, President Trump did an interview with the New York Times just yesterday, and in it he said that he thinks U.S. could be running Venezuela for years to come and working, and he also expressed that he thinks that he's doing well working with Delcy Rodriguez and the others who are part of the regime. Do you think Donald Trump is making a mistake in trusting that he can work with Delcy Rodriguez?
I think the Trump administration with State Secretary Marco Rubio and President Trump, they're not naive. They're told Delcy that they have to commit with the U.S. with the transition, and if they don't, they're gonna get the same destiny of Maduro or worse. That's a strong phrase in this moment, and that's useful to a transition. Why? Again, Delcy is a interim dictator. He's the second in charge of Nicolas Maduro. Not even Marco Rubio, State Secretary, President Trump, us in the opposition back in Venezuela are naive. This is a process, a difficult one. This is a criminal regime. We have to dismantle. We need to get down that regime to re-institutionalize Venezuela, the justice system back in our country, the oil sector, to produce wealth for our people, to produce also rebuild the hospitals, the schools, the infrastructure.
Is Delcy Rodriguez someone you think the U.S. should trust, or that you think that she will? I guess I'm just curious as to your impressions of who Delcy Rodriguez is. You talked about her being, Maduro's hand-picked number two, and it appears that there seems to be, since the events of last Saturday, some stepped-up repression. Still, people being arrested on the streets of Caracas. Does that worry you?
I don't think that the U.S. or President Trump or State Department Secretary Rubio trust Delcy. The other way around, they don't trust her, but they know that the criminal regime that maintain the ELN, FARC dissident, drug cartels back in Venezuela, we need to take it down, and it's a process. We can achieve a full transition to democracy with the opposition, with democracy. I mean, with elections, with a lot of things that we need in short term. So in this moment, Delcy is between the sword and the wall. I don't know if the translation to English is literally, but he got an impossible situation, you know.
The issue of oil, Donald Trump has made clear that oil is very important to him in this process. Do you worry that for average Venezuelans in the country, in Venezuela today, that they will see that as a sign of U.S. is only interested in their natural resources and is not really interested in restoring democracy? Does that worry you?
No, from the perspective of a Venezuelan, and again, we need to recover our oil sector, our oil industry that has decreased almost 2/3 parts of our production the last 10 years. I mean, we produced 10 years ago maybe 10 million, 3 million barrels a day. Today, not even 1 million. We need investment in the sector. We need, for that, the rule of law is very important, because if you have an industry here in the US or any where in the world, and you want to invest in any country, you need certainty, you need securities. So when the President Trump and Marco Rubio talk about the oil sector back in Venezuela, for us is good news.
Have you spoken to Secretary of State Marco Rubio since Saturday?
No, since Saturday, no.
Okay. And when you talk about a transition to democracy, we're obviously also talking about potentially holding new elections. Is that what you want to see? Do you want to see new elections? Or do you want to see the United States install the winners that they recognize of the 24 elections, Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado?
We want to see a full transition. I mean, independence of powers, full recovery of the judicial system, that the infrastructure in the country start again and rebuild that infrastructure, not only schools, hospitals, and also buildings, but also our democracy fully restored back in Venezuela. We want to Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia being recognized, but we also know that this is a transition that involves also part of the regime. I mean, in this moment, we got some kind of interim dictator, you know. But again, we have to take down that system and rebuild. So it is an election, a possibility, an opportunity in 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years. I think yes. I mean, every transition around, not only in Chile back in the 90s, also in Venezuela back in the 60s, end with an election. Why? We have to renew all the powers. We have to make confidence for the people in the system, not only in a moment, not only in words. We need to rebuild the confidence of the people in our institutions. And I think an election could help in that way.
You referred to Delcy a second ago, and I just want to go back to it. You consider Delcy Rodriguez to be an interim dictator?
Yeah, I say that several times in the interview. Delcy is the interim dictator. I mean, we're not naive about the situation, and also the administration is very clear with the path for Delcy and his entourage.
But you think also that elections probably are 6 months, a year, or a year and a half away. You don't see elections anytime soon.
Well, we want to recognize the institutions back in Venezuela. We elect Edmundo González Urrutia. In this moment, we are facing a transition that we want to end with democracy, with full rule of law back in Venezuela, the respect of the institutions. But we know it's a process. And we feel that the resistance of the Venezuelans, their vote, their sacrifice, their refusal to give up was not in vain. And in that way, we can achieve a full transition with an election. I mean, it's going to take time.
There are a number of Venezuelans who are in the United States who were covered under temporary protective status, who are subject now to deportation, whether it's back to Venezuela or to Mexico. While this uncertainty is going on inside Venezuela, while Delcy Rodriguez is still the interim dictator, to use your words, should the Trump administration stop deporting Venezuelans from the United States? In other words, should he allow the temporary protective status of Venezuelans to continue, at least for the short term?
If I understand well the words or the statement of the Homeland Security Secretary, the Venezuelans could ask for asylum in this moment. So there is a several ways to get protected in the U.S. in this moment. The situation back in Venezuela is still, as you know, and the secretary say, uncertainty. So in this moment, the main or the first way to achieve protection could be the asylum.
Back in 2019, 2020, did you ask for military support when you were interim president? Did you ask for U.S. military intervention at the time?
I went to the Oval Office in 2020. I spoke of several things with President Trump, and we spoke about not an intervention. I mean, that word have a pejorative connotation. So we seek for help. I mean, and the use of power it was one of them. And we spoke about this situation, but also in the UN. I mean, we need more tools to make accountable these kind of dictators, because the impunity it's a very harmful thing for democracy, for liberty, for stabilization of the region. So with this operation, in this moment, when they could happen, not in 2019 or in 2020, in this moment, with the context, with the proof that the United States have against the criminal Maduro, it's the moment to achieve. And I have to say, it was flawless operation to put before justice Maduro.
Do you have any interest in potentially running if there is elections, if there are new elections in Venezuela, whether it's a year or a year and a half from now? Do you have any interest in leading your party or trying to be part of any elections going forward?
You know, when I was 35 years old, I was the president of the National Assembly, interim president of Venezuela, recognized by 60 countries. I served with all my life to my country. In this moment, I already achieved that kind of charge, you know, that positions. I want to get back to my country. I want to help to rebuild our nation. I want to my two little girls can go back to our country as 8 million Venezuelans that have to live for the persecution, for the lack of opportunities, and a lot of things. But if I have to serve, I can serve in any position, not only in an election one. I already won several elections back in Venezuela. We need a strong team. This is not a one-person task. It's a society task in this moment with the help of the international community, and we're gonna need not only Venezuelans. We're gonna need a lot of people, investors. We're gonna need the rule of law. We're gonna need help to contain the guerrillas back in Venezuela, to the drug cartel. So this is going to be very, very good situation for Venezuela and the region, I have to say.
But just to ask more directly, would you like to be able to be president of Venezuela again?
Maybe you can ask me in 2 years or 5 years or 5 years.
All right. Mr. President, I thank you very much for your time. Was there anything else you wanted to say or discuss?
No, you have to say that President Donald Trump is a man of his words. I mean, several things that we discussed in that meeting in the Oval Office in 2020, he achieved. He was committed to achieve and delivery for the region, for the U.S. and for Venezuela, and we have a great gratitude with that determination.
When we come back, we will discuss the latest out of Venezuela with the Miami Herald's Tony Delgado. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Miami Herald's coverage of Venezuela has been exceptional, and that effort has been led by Antonio Maria Delgado. Tony was the first to report last October about secret negotiations between the Trump administration and Delcy Rodriguez about her potentially leading the transition in a post-Maduro Venezuela. So in this moment, I wanted to talk to him about how Delcy is now walking a tightrope, balancing her new cordial relationship with Donald Trump with her long-standing ties to the Russians and Cubans, as well as dealing internally with the military and those that control Venezuela's secret police.
The big question here is, can she actually do that? And that's a big question, because she does not have direct control over the military. She does have political power, quite a bit of it. But in the end, this is going to be settled by the guy or the people that control the guns. And she's not it. She might be able to offer some kind of way out of this situation for the lion's share of the Chavistas, but you got key people that are wondering if they might be able to survive on this, namely Diosdado Cabello and Padrino Lopez. Cabello has been allegedly been running the drug cartel himself for many, many years. And he's probably the most powerful member of the cartel, and arguably today one of the most powerful members of the regime. So how she's going to deal with that? That's going to be very difficult. And what is she going to do, for example, if the U.S. demands that she hands over Cabello to face charges here? That would pose a serious problem. And the information we have been getting out of Venezuela is that Cabello have been working very quickly right now to shore up his control over the military and his control of the people all across the nation, all across the country, not just the capital, but all over the country, to try to put him in line to be able to hold that control in case he needs it against Delcy.
I told you that earlier today I spoke to the former interim president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido, and he described Delcy as the interim dictator. That was the phrase that he used, which I thought was somewhat interesting. They seemed fine with the notion, or he seemed fine with the notion, that this could take 6 months, a year and a half before elections may be held, and that there's any sort of restoration of democracy. I'm curious, when you talk to, I know that you work with a lot of correspondents, that the Herald has, El Nuevo has, within Venezuela, people who are doing some extraordinary, very brave work. What are you hearing on the ground? Because we're getting mixed signals. We're hearing that they are releasing some political prisoners as an overture to Washington, but at the same time, we're also hearing that they're making arrests of certain individuals on the streets who are protesting in terms of support of having Maduro been removed. So what is the situation on the ground in Venezuela?
It's kind of complicated. My sense is that I think Delcy is trying to comply with the U.S. And I suspect there's a great deal of leverage the U.S. has over Delcy to the point that we don't exactly know what it is. That it goes beyond the threat of if you don't do what we say, you're going to be next. We suspect there's more than that. So we're seeing all this effort to go ahead and comply. That includes the the liberation today of political prisoners. But the announcements made yesterday by the administration that the U.S. is going to be running the oil industry, that's quite a concession.
For years, potentially, for years to come.
And it is one that it'd be hard to imagine in a Venezuela just a few months ago, run by the Chavistas.
Can you imagine, though? I'm wondering again what you're hearing through your reporting as to how the people of Venezuela within the country are reacting, because there isn't a lot of talk about democracy. There is a lot of talk about oil, and the way Donald Trump summarily dismissed Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez. I'm wondering if you're sitting at home in Venezuela, somewhere in the suburbs of Caracas, trying to figure out what happens next. Is your life appreciably being better now today than it was a week ago?
The answer is no. I mean, the regime is still there. And there's a lot of fear. I think you're going to start with the fact that the Chavistas have, basically no real popular support in the country. I think if you did a poll and you get people to answer honestly, you would get that maybe their support is around somewhere between 5 and 10%, not higher than that. The rest of the population wants them gone. Not only because under Maduro the economy shrunk by somewhere between 75 to 80%, which is staggering. But also there was a lot of violence, and the situation led to 8 million people leaving the country. That's almost a quarter of the population. So I'm guessing a lot of people want to go out and celebrate, but they have this threat because they got the colectivos, the paramilitary groups outside, and there's for years there's a risk of grabbing you in the streets and being taken to a prison and being tortured, which is quite common in Venezuela.
And you think that threat still remains today?
Yes, there's no change, not at this point. So it's to say that the country is free, that's very premature. I tend to agree with Juan Guaido about this taking time, because the key issues have not been resolved, namely the control of the military, which we know that, like I was saying earlier, that Delcy does not have. And the people that are opposed to this plan coming out of Washington, namely Gustavo Cabello and the defense minister and a whole lot of people, are the ones in control of the military. So, it's really going to be difficult to be able to get some kind of formula where you can free the nation and remove these controls of the people, and without removing some of these key players.
We'll be right back. That's all the time we have today. If you have any thoughts or comments, feel free to contact me at jdefede@cbs.com. I do enjoy hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.